Hey everybody, this is Waylon from Elephant Journal, and I am here with my acquaintance, Boulder friend, Shelby Kaminski.
Hi.
And what the hell do you do? What are we going to generally be talking about today? Because it's super interesting to me, and I hope to like 5 other people out there.
Yeah. We're going to pretty much be talking about the soil.
Yeah.
And why the soil is integral to our well-being.
Soil is literally dirt, ground, blah, blah, blah. We're almost taught growing up in America to kind of like, it's almost like, you're nothing, you're dirt, whatever. It's like an insult.
Yeah.
It's boring.
Yeah.
Why is it not boring and so amazing?
Yeah. Even the word shit. Which is manure, right? And it's totally food for the soil.
Before you answer, now that you said that, I interviewed a professor of poop, as he called himself. Literally a professor who all he did was talk about how we deal with our human waste.
Cool.
And it was one of the most interesting interviews for me that I've ever done in my life. It blew my mind. Mm-hmm. Stuff you all know.
Well, that's like a way that we are disconnected is, you know, like our sewage systems.
Yes.
And not... Like, I don't know. There's so many ways we can go about it.
So we're here to talk about super sexy subjects like dirt and poop.
Compost.
Yeah.
Well, everyone thinks that compost is like poop because compost can't be made with animal manure. But there's also plant-based compost. Like, there's so many types of compost. But yeah, exactly. People who have composting toilets.
So just real quick, then I think people will have arrived. The professor of poop, what blew my mind, and maybe would blow everyone's mind out there, it won't blow your mind because your mind has already been blown, I am sure. But he basically explained how like chemical fertilizers, you know, they're toxic, we kind of know that, and you have to ship them in. And then there's poisonous runoff from like factory farms. Mm-hmm. But how it used to be with small farms is they would have not too much animal poop, and they'd use that for fertilizer on the farm. It was like a circle.
Yep, a closed
loop. And they didn't have to spend money on this toxic stuff that does have some good returns short term, but long term kind of kills the soil. Yeah. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, there would be no way that these like chemicals or products got so, you know, widespread and popular if they didn't actually work.
Yeah.
And it's not about the efficacy of like if they work. It's, you know, what is our end goal? Are we trying to act like what you said earlier? You said something was like on a lifeline. What were you? Like when we were outside, like using fertilizer for your plants is like putting them on a lifeline. Like you have to constantly feed them or they are not going to know what to do because they're so reliant on us feeding them. So the end result is actually for the plants to feed themselves because they have that inherent nature. It's like us as humans, we know how to feed ourselves. And if we start relying on a system, which like in some ways we do, you know, by just like a grocery store, it's like it's a very big disconnect from actually growing your own food at the end of the day.
Okay, you go to Amazon Whole Foods, as I call it. No one should call it Whole Foods anymore because they're kind of killing what was great about Whole Foods. And there's like delicious, anything you want, usually wrapped in plastic, usually being shipped from far away. Why is that bad for the world? Because it's great for us.
Well, there's many levels to it. There's, you know, just having to transport it takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of time. And instead of, like actually resourcing from what we have around us, because we live in a place that there's tons of farms, there's tons of people who are growing food on a large scale. And so if that was just directed more to the grocery stores, but the grocery stores have these bigger contracts with these bigger farms so that they can ensure that it's coming in.
And most restaurants
in a timely way.
Used to be like that, still are like that. But in Boulder, when I moved back in 99, our farms were dying. It was like farmers markets weren't a thing. And then Michael Pollan, God bless him, did a whole series on like he bought his own cow until it was killed. And he did this whole series for New York Times and then wrote these books that like literally, farmers markets increased 10,000% in the next decade. And Kitchen and all these restaurants started like displaying what farmers they use. Kitchen doesn't do that anymore. So, but you know, it's been sort of a re-revolution coming back to this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're part of that.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about what you're doing. So Edaphic Solutions is your company, woman-owned. What the heck do you do?
Woo! So we provide a natural way to take care of your yard and your garden or your trees or, you know, a farmer. It doesn't have to just be someone with a yard or a garden, truly. And also part of it is just to educate people. So if you don't even have a yard or a garden, it's to teach that the soil is a living organism and it needs certain things. It needs food, water, shelter, protection and care, just like we do in our bodies. So once people kind of wake up to that, then maybe they start seeing the world in a different way and start making other decisions. So it really is like a trickle down echoing effect of what we do, because like, yes, a lot of people like meet us and like, oh, I don't have a yard and a garden. And it's like, yeah, to use our services, maybe like that's what you need.
Because your services are, I'm going to guess, you drive around in like a truck.
Yeah.
You have a huge liquid compost thing.
So we're kind of like the like old fashioned landscape companies in that way, not landscape companies, fertilizer companies, where they come to your yard and garden and we will feed your plants a certain amount of times a year. But instead of using inorganic fertilizer or pesticides and any chemicals.
You said inorganic.
Yes,
like
inorganic.
Not organic.
Yes. Yeah. And inorganic just means that it's like a salt-based fertilizer that was made probably in a factory. A lot of like forms of nitrogen come from petroleum. So what we do is the same thing where we drive and come and treat your plants, but we do it with an all organic liquid that we call compost tea, which is just water and compost and all these other plant foods like kelp and humic acid and molasses and just different types of sugars, all things that just are really easily available.
Can you drink it?
You can drink compost
molasses.
tea. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's just not like we don't promote it that way. But yes, I know people that have 100% drank compost tea.
So you may not want to drink it, but it's interesting that you could.
It's tea.
Like it's
a
not
drink for your plants and your soil.
But then the other stuff is sort of poisonous often. We're spraying chemicals and...
Yeah, like there's an interview with the... I think he was the CEO of Monsanto at the time, that they brought him a glass of glyphosate. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Sure
and like on camera, they're like, he won't drink it, even though he said.
Yeah.
So if someone were to do that with me with compost tea, I would drink it.
Yeah, you'd be like, look, it's not meant for drinking, it's not tasty necessarily, but you can. And in fact, maybe it's vaguely good for you.
But what's funny is that now, like all this like trending and excitement around the soil is really going hand in hand with our health. And so they're finding out like all these things about the microbes in the soil. So they're finding out things about microbes in our stomachs, and they're the same microbes. There's the same microbes that are found in the soil that are good for the plants, that help the plants, are the same ones in our bodies.
And this is stuff I feel like people in Boulder kind of know about, but like, why do we want microbes in our tummy? That sounds weird.
Well, actually, we are made up of more microbes than we are cells. So microbes, what they are is microorganisms that are constantly like, they're living, they're eating each other, they're replenishing. It's just like a constant cycle.
Over.
Yes, they're all over. They protect our skin, they protect our gut, they protect our intestines.
So if you're having digestion or health issues,
that means that your gut is probably out of balance in a way. And it has a lot to do with what you're eating, but also it has a lot to do with your mind. They're finding out this brain-gut connection. Yes, and it's super amazing that, well, what we feel and what we think to ourselves, like when no one's listening, is probably the most important thing, and that makes up our cells and everything in our body. So there's a science behind like how our thoughts and our cells and our microbes are all connected. So if you are kind of, not talking very nice to yourself, like you're not talking nice to your body, and your body is responding in these ways, it's your subconscious mind, truly. But it's all connected. There's no disconnect.
Well, that's literally what you're talking about, or that Professor Poop is talking about. Ecosystem, seeing a banana as part of an ecosystem instead of a product that you buy. You don't think about how it got there.
Yeah. And I want to also empower people to just be able to make compost tea at their home. Like, it doesn't have to be this, like, my business comes. It's just that actually, not a lot of people are doing that. So we are bringing this option to people who have never even thought about it before. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'll cancel my True Green subscription, which is a company that sprays pesticides and inorganic fertilizer and has been around. No, I know, and they've been around for so long.
Yeah.
And people will cancel them and start with us, and they totally see, like, if not like better results, but they connect with their yard in a different way because they're like learning all these things, and so they're like, okay. Like, now I understand that maybe I don't actually have to fertilize my yard, which is a whole concept that I think has been, like, sold to us. But we do have to care for plants. Like, plants, there is a level of care that we have to have for plants so they can care for us.
Yeah. And fertilizing our yards sounds good. I mean, you were saying we need to take care of it, or they need to take care of themselves in the way that we do. So what, isn't it just like we don't want nasty fertilizer, we want the good stuff, the compost tea?
Yes, and so I don't even really like to call compost tea a fertilizer because I think it puts it in a box. It is like a prebiotic for your soil and your plants because there's a whole microbiome not only living in the soil but living on the plant surfaces, just like our skin. And so when we are spraying these beneficial microbes on the plants in the soil, we like those microbes will actually live in the soil for a long period of time. And they will go through their cycle. And so once they have found their home, and as long as we're not spraying chemicals or anything, like we can kind of remove ourselves from that. So I do tell my clients that you can have your garden sprayed with compost tea every year. Like there's no way to like feed your plants with it, but after a while you'll see that your yard will just become its own ecosystem that you don't have to interfere with. Maybe just like pruning things up and but building up the immune system of your yard and garden makes it so you don't have to use like pests and even a weed killer, because weeds don't like healthy soil, and weeds usually grow in places where there aren't a lot of plants. So if you're planting more plants, then the weeds will be outcompeted and have nowhere to live and no food to eat. So it's just using the forces of nature to help nature. It's like a pretty
I love that.
simple concept. Like we've been calling it nature-based solutions.
Love that.
Because, but I also don't necessarily perceive that we have a problem. So it's just like...
What do you mean?
Well, I don't want to perceive that the world is like in this dire need of our help. Like I think that this is just a call to action for humans to actually reunite and be in harmony with nature. It's not necessarily like we're killing the earth and we're the cancer of the planet. Like it's just like a time of like the earth being like, hey, you have to really live with us. And so to me, it's not a problem. That's like an opportunity and something that we can really, really step into, and it can be really beautiful. And people are already doing it. Like I know that Boulder, Colorado, yes, is a very unique place where we are with people and how they relate to the environment, but there are places like this all over, and people that have epic gardens and have been building their soil, and it's like it's becoming more and more of a network, and more people are really awakening to that, and it's so beautiful to witness and be a part of it.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch there, but like also redefining what weeds are. Like it always cracks me up that we go to farmer's market and we pay $5.99 a pound for dandelion greens, and meanwhile we're poisoning dandelions in our own yard, which is poisoning our yard and ourselves a little bit. So I'm curious, like some weeds can be beneficial in some ways. Like dandelions, bees love them, right?
Absolutely. So a lot of weeds have medicinal properties, and yes, they're great.
Do you know Brigitte Mars?
Yes, I love her.
Love her.
She is such a voice for that, and about how to eat dandelions and how to prepare them. And I think that's all it really boils down to, is people getting the education and getting the awareness and experience with it themselves, and then they will start adopting it themselves. Like sometimes it's hard to learn something and then be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go home and do that. It's just kind of like what I feel is that plants come into people's lives for a reason. And so like, if you have a lot of dandelions in your yard or something, like it's an opportunity to see that differently instead of just being like, I hate these things. It's like, what? Oh, maybe I could. Like you can make fertilizer with dandelions. You can make it into juice.
I wanted to ask about this because a friend of mine, one of my best friends, just bought his first house. He had an apartment before, but he bought his first house. And his first thing to do was, like, everyone was over, and I'm over, and we're moving boxes. And everyone's like, oh, my God, you can weed, you can cut all this stuff. And in my mind, you see my yard, which is all weeds. And, some cool stuff. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But it felt a little funny because the dandelions were happy and the bees were on them.
Yeah, and then that's what they were focused on, was like, this is a mess.
And then he put them all in the trash or the compost or whatever to be taken off. So what could you do with all that big pile? If you are going to weed, what can you do with that big pile instead of giving it to the trash company? You can make that into compost, right? Yeah.
You can just make a compost pile and you just let those leaves dry out in the sun, and then like it will dry out like the seeds.
Just compost it.
Yeah, compost it or put it in a bucket of water and make a dandelion ferment.
That's what I was thinking. Like some sort of like... Yeah.
Because it's literally the same thing. Dandelions are good for our bodies, and so they're good for the soil. And the reasons why they're so good for the soil and so resilient is not only because they've been evolving with the soil for millions of years, but they have the really deep taproots. So they reach nutrients and minerals that the other plants can't.
And that's good.
Yeah, and so that's all stored in their roots. So dandelion
and they store
root,
moisture and probably help other plants.
Yes.
The
So
microbiome or whatever.
yeah, it's this like contradicting thing of like, are the dandelions really bad? Like Brigitte has this thing about like the dandelions are not the enemy. And it truly is like our mindset around weeds and what pests or just what beauty is. You know, like your place is so wild and beautiful, and it's funny because like the neighbors' yards are so
perfect.
Yeah, I mean, not perfect, but it's just, you can tell that they were like, no way am I going to have what you have. And I don't know if you've had your neighbors talk to you about it. I'm like curious. Or like the city doesn't fine you or anything for weeds.
So yeah, I kind of was getting to that. That's cool you went there. So my next door neighbors, they don't mind at all. If anything, I'm blocking the noise and the dust, which is part of the reason I have so much.
With more privacy, you create privacy.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of traffic. So I'm trying to block some of that. And they benefit from that, and it cools everything, as you know. Like my
it creates so
yard
much shade.
Yeah, and it's wetter.
You're
and cooler.
protecting the soil.
So they don't mind, mostly because they're super sweet. My old neighbors, like, also were super sweet, but definitely kind of minded. They were a little more like moderate Republicans. They're like, "What are you doing?
Yeah,
it looks embarrassing."
Yeah.
My next door neighbors on the other side are college kids, so it's managed by Boulder Property Management. They just come by with their Monsanto and like Roundup or whatever it is, and like put the poison signs in the yard.
The flags.
Yeah, and they don't care. So I don't think they poison over here. I've never seen the flags. So those poison flags, that's an interesting thing. And then I have another question.
Yeah.
But is that bad? Like, we're poisoning our earth. Is it bad for dogs? Yes. Is it bad for babies? Is it bad for us? Is it bad for our water and animals?
100%. It's like all of it. So it's like to focus just on one thing, like, is it bad for pets? Like, yes, your pet might be in the grass more than you in public areas because they're going to the bathroom and, you know, like
and
walking.
Eats the grass.
Yes, but then they like bring that into your house. And so it's really about like spreading the weed killer.
That's why we take off
glyphosate.
Shoes too. You're
Exactly.
bringing in pesticides, you're bringing in feces, whatever. Like, take off your shoes, people.
Glyphosate is a like cell killer. Like, it kills cells. And so, yeah, it like kills the plant wall cells. So if that's what it does to weeds, what does it do in our bodies? And we're spraying the same glyphosate on the food that we eat. So that there is glyphosate in all of our blood. Like, it's just the truth.
And PFAs.
And like we, of course, like I think that humans are resilient and we can handle things like this. But I just think for the long term, like what I was saying earlier, nature and Mother Earth is just like, no, like we are not doing this anymore. It's just going to come this point, and that we are going to have no choice but to just get more in alignment.
Thanks for listening. Hope you're getting a lot out of it. The full conversation is on our indie platform that supports and continues our work, elephantjournal.com/videos. You can subscribe, listen, watch, and participate there. And when you do so, you'll keep these mindful videos and podcasts going. elephantjournal.com/videos. May it be of benefit.